In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We hear the Gospels Sunday after Sunday, and we find that Jesus, he went to Nazareth, and yes, he preached there. Yes, he preached in Capharnaum. Yes, he preached at Bethsaida. We say, where are those places? Well, I think we have a general picture there in what is called present-day Israel, but we realize that if we take just the geography of his preaching, it extended probably for about 100 miles east-west and probably about 20 miles, north-south, about 20 miles east-west, the preaching of Jesus. And I think when we read it, we realize how many passages really are referring to the Hebrew people. He was Jewish himself, of course, and he's preaching to other Jews and presenting the message. And it's in that context we have today's gospel, where he says, those invited to the feast. But so many of them just found other excuses and went in other directions. And then he tells about the invitation just spreading out beyond that. And that refers to the call of the Gentiles, most of our own ancestry. And with that, we might know that when Jesus was in Jerusalem, some people came to him and they said, some Greeks are here, and they want to speak with you. And Jesus, when he heard that these Gentiles, the Greeks, wanted to speak with him, he then recognized that the time of his particular preaching mission was over. But he said, if I be lifted up on the cross, if I be lifted up, I will draw all peoples to me. And therefore, we recognize that during the life of Jesus, they were preaching that message of the kingdom, but they weren't preaching really the crucifixion, the resurrection. What I think we know is very fundamental to our own faith. They weren't preaching that. It had not yet happened. And it's something then of that wider mission that the apostles undertook. We have that situation in which some Greeks came to Jesus and said, we would like to speak to the Master, to the disciples of Jesus, and we would like to speak. The Greeks came. And with that, as you might know, Christianity moved into that world where culture was largely Greek culture. Greek was the international language, and therefore the whole New Testament, as far as we know, was originally written in Greek. And Christianity moved into Greek culture. But I think if we study something of that history of Christianity, we can see how largely it was influenced by Greek culture. And yet what it did, I think it brought a new burst of vitality into that Greek culture. As something of that message, the good news, that message that included, yes, the crucifixion, yes, the resurrection. As that basic story moved into these different cultures, Greek culture first of all, it brought some kind of a new life and vitality. And maybe we've traced it as Christianity moved into the countries of Northern Europe that had no real knowledge of Greek culture, and the different forms that Christianity took as it entered these other cultures. And, well, that's how Christianity grew. I think things were stationary for some time, and we find then with the age of discovery, Christianity reaching out. Perhaps you know, the Jesuits, founded in 1540. All right? St. Ignatius, born, founder of the Jesuits, born the year before the discovery of America, 1491. And during his own lifetime, he sent Jesuits to India, Francis Xavier, Japan, Indonesia, Africa, South America, North America. We get something of this globalization. Globalization is in 1522 when Magellan tried to sail around the world. He got part of the way around it. Well, he gets killed. But his ship made it around the world. And for the first time, some kind of a sense of a globe was there. A sense of a globe was there. And with that, we get some kind of a sense of a global Christianity. A global Christianity. Now, I go back earlier than probably anybody else in this chapel. But I remember back in my younger days, I'm Irish. I remember back in my younger days, there used to be the Polish parish, the Italian parish, the Irish parish. All right? I suppose we all had our different little cultures and our different little songs, etc., etc. There was the old German parish. This was something of Christianity in America, very much identified with these different national groups. Well, that's pretty well gone. That's pretty well gone, and we don't really think that way. Somehow or another, we can talk about American Catholicism or American Christianity. But beyond that, I think we are getting in our own time a global Christianity as never before. Now, I recognize that in the nations of Europe, the number of Christians is going down, but globally, the number of Christians is growing very rapidly. And if you want to know more about that, I have 2 books I'll wave at you, and you can read them if you want. But anyway, the next Christendom, the coming of global Christianity, written by a sociologist at the University of Penn State. Anyway, Philip Jenkins. So you can read that, and he tells about how it's growing. The history of Christianity is a history of innovative and unpredictable adaptations. All right? Something that moved to a global Christianity. What difference will it make when we, who I think are all largely out of that context of European Christianity, as Christianity becomes global, that is, the invitation in today's gospel is reaching out to more people. What will the difference be? And even they say around about the year 2000, 8 years behind us, around that time, the majority of people that are Christians are really not of European origin at all. And that has been something more or less recent. But I pointed out that it's something of Christianity's ability to enter into these other cultures and come up with a very different expression. And I think that's something that is going on with globalization today. Something of the coming of global Christianity. And I think it's what we find. Go out and invite others into the feast. Others are being invited into the feast. And sometime, I think, as we see them, we say, oh, they seem to have a better appreciation of Christianity than I do. Well, that can be the case. We find then, they go out and they gathered all they found into the feast, and that is, they gathered both bad and good alike. And with that, they gathered in the bad and the good alike. Now, it would be nice if everybody who claimed to be Christian really acted that way. But, sorry, that's not the story. We all know stories of different misbehavior of people who should have more love for the gospel. We know those stories, and in some way we're offended by them. And sometimes we can find ourselves confused by them. And yet we get here, Jesus saying, bring into the feast bad and good alike. And Christianity is a feast, and yet bad and good alike. And with that, I say that Christianity has brought a certain vitality to cultures. I could point out that the universities in this country, the early universities, such as Georgetown, were founded with religious roots, very much a Christian inspiration. I could also point out that the university has been around for about 1,000 years, and for the first 500 years, every university was a Christian university. It's something, that ability that Christianity has of animating culture and animating a mind. making the mind more active and more reaching out into new and different dimensions. And so we find that large Christian tradition that is behind ourselves, a large Christian culture is there. And we find our culture is changing very rapidly. So, with that, bad and good alike, I went to a gathering on Thursday night, and Carrie Kennedy was there, and she is Bobby Kennedy's daughter, but she's written a book called Being Catholic Now. Is that right? Anyway, she tells here she has about 35 different people that they tell their story about what their Catholicism means to them. One is like Martin Sheen, the actor. Another is Cokie Roberts of TV fame. Another is Cardinal McCarrick, who used to be the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington. They tell what it means for them, what their Catholicism means for them now. And I think it often comes out to being something very different than what Catholicism was 50 years ago. It comes out very different, and yet something being Catholic now. And that's where maybe we come in. Being Catholic now. And now, here we are, and we've gathered in the church. And I think when we come to church, we often look around to try to get a picture of who all's here. Are the in people here? Oh no, they're all outsiders. I think we look around and try to see that. But we're told that the bad and good alike come in. Great. That's who's gathered here. I know Father Jim Walsh in our theology department. He tells about meeting somebody from a small church and said, "Oh, we don't really have that much doctrine, but we're just all good people." And Father Walsh says, "Oh, I'm a Catholic and we're not good people at all. Some of us are good and some of us aren't. Anyway, we're not that." And I think we can find that. I think we can be scandalized when we hear that the 800,000 people killed in Rwanda were Roman Catholics killing Roman Catholics. Ooh, not nice. Anyway, but we hear these things, and yet our church now. I point that out at this time, and I could also indicate that a book came out several years ago, and it was called The End of Faith. All right, saying that faith is coming to an end. I just think you should read this book telling about how fast Christianity is growing, but he didn't consider that. Anyway, the end of faith. But what he argues there is that look at the terrible things that the faith has done, largely Christianity. Yes, there was the Inquisition, and yes, there's this, yes, there's that. Anyway, he says the terrible things that faith has done. And anyway, I read that book, and what amazed me, he didn't point out what atheism has done. I thought, there, he wrote that. It came out about 10 years ago. He wrote that, and he didn't say anything about what atheism has done in the 20th century. There where we have Hitler with his anti-religious policies, and different estimates, 20 million. Stalin with his anti-religious policies, 40 million. Mao Zedong, the all-timer. And a recent book said that he is responsible for 70 million people dying, not counting deaths in warfare. And somehow, in pointing out the evils of the Inquisition, which it seems like 3,000 people died in, he just didn't get around to pointing out that atheism has done some pretty bad things too. Religion, yes, it has a mixed history. It has a mixed history. But I see it very much the same as love has a mixed history. Love has a mixed history. Certainly we could list the crimes and the atrocities that have been done in the name of love. And yet somehow, I don't think we want to give it up. And I think that Christianity in some way is deeply involved with love. And with that, it's deeply involved in the human character. And with that deep involvement in human character, affecting people deeply, sometimes they'll do things of incredible nobility, and sometimes of incredible horror. And what do we make of it? Well, I think each of us tries to deal with that privately, and what do we make of it? I think it's something that has just beautiful, beautiful ideals, and I think that there are many great saints who have lived those ideals in wonderful ways. And with that, that is what our church proclaims. And I think that all over the world now, many volunteers are working with different Catholic or Christian organizations, often doing medical work, doing feeding the hungry. In this book by Carrie Kennedy, she tells about working herself in Liberia, which she says 7% Catholic. And she said, during the troubles they've been having in Liberia, only the Catholic schools, only the Catholic hospitals stayed open. The others all disappeared. Anyway, she goes on and tells different stories like that she finds inspirational. And I say that our Catholic Church, we're part of it. It's a global church. We belong to this global activity, and I can point out the first global activity in the history of the world, the Catholic Universalist Church that we are part of. And we have some kind of a great mission. And that great mission, it depends upon you. In some way, you, to give it the vitality of your own person, the vitality of your own faith, the expression that only you can give it, an expression that in some way or another reaches to the world. It's, yes, my challenge as part of the clergy, but it's also part of yours as the church reaches out in this 21st century, acquires all kind of new different dimensions that would not have been understood. It's your church and my church. It's our church. It is not spotless, but really marvelous achievements. Marvelous achievements. Will they continue? That depends upon you. And the way that you live your faith. The way that this great enterprise that Jesus started, in which bad and good alike are found, human beings individually respond and say, I can make it more lovely, more beautiful by my being part of it and the way I live. It's a challenge we all have. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.